Today, we're diving into Chapter 1 of Atomic Habits by James Clear. This chapter introduces us to the surprising power of tiny, consistent changes and how they can lead to extraordinary results. In The Surprising Power of Atomic Habits, Clear explains that our habits are the compound interest of self-improvement. Just like how small amounts of money grow over time with compound interest, tiny habits can build up to significant results. Clear uses the metaphor of compound interest to illustrate his point. He emphasizes that while small habits might not show immediate results, their effects accumulate and compound over time, leading to significant improvements. It's about those tiny changes that may seem insignificant in the short term but create a powerful impact over the long run. For instance, imagine someone who starts with just a 5-minute workout each day. At first, it may seem trivial, but over months and years, this small habit can lead to dramatic improvements in health and fitness. The key is consistency. Each small step, no matter how minor it seems, contributes to a larger, transformative effect. By visually recording your progress, you create a feedback loop that encourages you to keep going. Seeing your streak of completed habits can boost motivation and help you maintain consistency. The essence of Chapter 1 is that focusing on small, manageable changes makes the process of improving your life less overwhelming. By integrating tiny habits into your daily routine, you set yourself up for long-term success without needing massive, immediate changes. Chapter 1 of Atomic Habits teaches us that small habits, compounded over time, can lead to extraordinary results. It's about making tiny, consistent changes that build up and transform your life in significant ways. Now, let's dive into Chapter 2, where Clear reveals how these habits are closely tied to our identity and how changing our self-image can make our habits stick. In How Your Habits Shape Your Identity, and Vice Versa, Clear explores a powerful concept. Habits are not just actions we take but are deeply connected to our identity. Rather than merely focusing on achieving goals, Clear emphasizes that our habits reflect and build our self-image. Clear introduces the idea of identity-based habits. Instead of setting a goal to run a marathon, for example, envision yourself as a runner. This shift in perspective turns the habit into a natural part of who you are. When you see yourself as a runner, running becomes more than a goal, it becomes a reflection of your identity. Changing your identity begins with small, consistent actions that align with the person you want to become. If you want to be healthier, start by adopting habits that reflect this identity. Over time, these small actions reinforce your new self-image, making it easier to maintain these habits. Clear also delves into the habit loop, which includes a cue, craving, response, and reward. By focusing on identity, you influence each part of this loop. When your habits align with your identity, they become more ingrained and easier to sustain. By adopting identity-based habits, you're not just working towards a goal, you're embodying a new way of being. This approach helps build a stronger, more resilient self-image, making it easier to stick with your habits and achieve lasting change. What if I told you that the secret to transforming your life lies not in big, dramatic changes, but in tiny, daily actions? In this video, we'll dive into a fascinating concept from James Clear's book, Atomic Habits. Chapter 3. How to Build Better Habits in 4 Simple Steps. Let's imagine this. But there's a way out of this cycle. According to James Clear, every habit follows a predictable pattern, and understanding this pattern can help us take control of our habits. Sam's habits, and yours, follow a loop of 4 steps: cue, craving, response, and reward. Each of these plays a vital role in shaping our daily behaviors. First, we have the cue. The cue is the trigger that sets the habit in motion. For Sam, it might be the sound of his alarm clock in the morning or the ding of a notification. Next is craving. This is the desire that the cue triggers. When Sam's alarm goes off, his craving is to feel rested or maybe to stay comfortable in bed. The third step is the response. This is the action we take in response to our craving. Sam hits the snooze button. He responds by choosing comfort over getting up. And finally, we have the reward. The reward is what satisfies the craving. In Sam's case, the reward is a few extra minutes of sleep. But in the long run, This small reward reinforces his bad habit of hitting snooze and skipping his morning workout. You see, this habit loop, cue, craving, response, reward, is what keeps Sam stuck. But here's the good news. By understanding this loop, Sam can start to rewire his habits. And so can you. Let's look at how Sam can break this cycle and build better habits using James Clear's 4 simple steps. Step 1. Make it obvious. Sam's first step is to make the cue more visible. He sets out his workout clothes and places his alarm across the room. Now, when the alarm rings, the sight of his workout clothes and the action of getting out of bed serve as his cue to start his day on the right foot. Step 2. Make it attractive. Habits are easier to stick with when they're enjoyable. Sam decides to pair his workout with something he loves, listening to his favorite podcast or music. Step 3. Make it easy. The key is to start small. Instead of committing to a 30-minute workout right away, Sam begins with just 5 minutes of stretching and light exercise. This removes the resistance to getting started. And finally, step 4. Make it satisfying. After each workout, Sam marks his progress on a calendar. This small act of checking off the day reinforces his sense of accomplishment and gives him an immediate reward. By following these 4 steps, make it obvious, make it attractive, make it easy, and make it satisfying, Sam is slowly building the habits that will transform his life. And so can you. Habits are the compound interest of self-improvement. Tiny changes lead to remarkable results over time. So, what small habit will you start today? Let us know in the comments below. And if you found this video helpful, don't forget to like and subscribe. Sam is starting to see the benefits of his new habits. His mornings are more focused, his productivity is increasing, and he's feeling better than ever. But how can we go even deeper? Let's explore Chapter 4 of Atomic Habits, where James Clear introduces us to the power of the brain's ability to recognize patterns and signals, sometimes without us even realizing it. It's the story of a man who saved lives just by trusting his instincts. The chapter starts with the story of a seasoned nurse who worked in a hospital. One day, she saw a patient in the emergency room who didn't look right. The patient seemed fine on the surface. His vitals were normal, he wasn't in visible distress, but something about him made her uneasy. Despite the lack of obvious symptoms, she trusted her gut and alerted the doctor. As it turned out, the patient was experiencing a life-threatening condition. The nurse's instincts saved his life. So, what happened here? This nurse wasn't psychic. Instead, she was using something we all have, the ability to unconsciously detect patterns based on past experiences. This is called non-conscious thinking. Just like the nurse, Sam's brain is always working in the background. Every day, as he repeats his new habits, his brain starts recognizing patterns. These patterns allow him to make decisions faster and with less effort, without even realizing it. This is how habits become automatic. Think about it. After a while, you don't need to think about brushing your teeth, or tying your shoes, or turning off the lights before bed. These actions become automatic. Sam's goal is to make his productive habits automatic in the same way. But here's the key takeaway from Chapter 4. Habits are automatic because your brain is constantly making predictions. When Sam first started his new routine, it took effort. He had to consciously plan his day, set up cues, and push through resistance. But with repetition, his brain learned to anticipate the reward of his habits. Feeling energized after a workout, the satisfaction of completing a task, and the process became smoother. Your brain loves efficiency. As Sam builds consistency, his brain creates shortcuts. It starts predicting the outcomes of his actions before they happen. Over time, this is how good habits become effortless. But there's a catch. Just like good habits can become automatic, so can bad habits. The same brain mechanisms that help Sam wake up and exercise every morning can also keep him scrolling through social media late into the night. That's why it's important to be aware of what your brain is doing on autopilot. The secret lies in becoming aware of the cues that drive your behavior. Once you understand that, you can start to reprogram your brain by creating better cues and predicting better rewards. For example, if Sam wants to break the habit of staying up late on his phone, he can change the environment. Instead of leaving his phone by the bed, he places it across the room and picks up a book. The new cue, seeing the book, prompts a new craving, the desire to relax. And the reward? A restful night's sleep. Chapter 4 teaches us that habits, both good and bad, are influenced by our brain's ability to predict outcomes. When you can recognize the patterns in your behavior, you can start to take control. And like Sam, you can build a system that works for you. So, here's what you can do. Think about your current habits. What cues trigger them? What cravings follow? And what rewards do you seek? Once you identify these, you can start to shape your behavior, one small change at a time. Habits are powerful, but they don't have to control you. By becoming aware of the cues and rewards that drive your behavior, you can start to make intentional choices and build habits that lead to long-term success. Sam has made some great progress. He's waking up earlier, exercising, and feeling more productive each day. But there's always room for improvement, right? How can he ensure that he keeps this momentum going? In Chapter 5 of Atomic Habits, James Clear gives us the secret to starting new habits and making sure they stick. It all comes down to two powerful strategies, the 2-minute rule and habit stacking. Let's take a look at Sam. He's trying to build more positive habits, but sometimes he gets stuck. He thinks, I want to read more, meditate, and improve my skills, but where do I even begin? It's easy to feel overwhelmed when you're trying to build new habits. That's where the 2-minute rule comes in. The 2-minute rule is simple. Whenever you want to start a new habit, start with something that takes 2 minutes or less. Instead of committing to reading for an hour, Sam starts by reading just 1 page. Instead of doing a 30-minute workout, he begins with 2 minutes of stretching. Why 2 minutes? Because it lowers the barrier to starting. It's hard to talk yourself out of something that takes only 2 minutes. The goal is to make the action so easy that you can't say no. Here's the magic of the 2-minute rule. Once you get started, it's much easier to keep going. Sam might plan to stretch for just 2 minutes, but once he's started, he's much more likely to continue with a full workout. This approach works because it builds momentum. James Clear reminds us that the key to success is showing up, even if it's just for a short time. You can always scale up later. The important thing is to start. Now, let's talk about the second strategy from Chapter 5, habit stacking. This is where Sam can take his new habits to the next level. Habit stacking is a technique where you use an existing habit as a trigger for a new one. For example, Sam already has a morning routine where he makes coffee. He can stack a new habit, like reading for 2 minutes, onto this existing routine. Here's how it works. After Sam makes his coffee, he sits down and reads 1 page of his book. The existing habit, making coffee, becomes the cue for the new habit, reading. This makes it easier for Sam to integrate reading into his day without feeling like he's adding extra effort. Habit stacking follows a simple formula. After current habit, I will, new habit. This formula allows you to piggyback on the habits you already do. For example, after brushing your teeth, you might decide to meditate for 2 minutes. After sitting down for dinner, you might spend 2 minutes journaling. The beauty of habit stacking is that it doesn't require drastic changes to your schedule. Sam doesn't need to carve out an extra 30 minutes in his day. He's simply building on routines he already has. The more he stacks these small 2-minute habits, the more they become ingrained in his daily life. It's like planting seeds that will grow over time into stronger, more complex habits. Here's the thing. It's easy to think that small habits don't matter. But as James Clear says, habits are the compound interest of self-improvement. Just as money multiplies through compound interest, the effects of your habits multiply as you repeat them. By stacking tiny, 2-minute habits, Sam is setting the foundation for long-term success. And so can you. Whether it's reading, meditating, or exercising, the key is to start small, stay consistent, and build from there. Chapter 5 teaches us that the best way to start a new habit is to make it easy and stack it onto an existing routine. By doing this, you'll not only make starting easier, but you'll also create a system where your habits work together, building momentum over time. So, what new habit will you start today? Try the 2-minute rule, stack it onto a habit you already have, and watch how quickly your routine transforms. Sam is feeling great about his progress. He's been consistent with his 2-minute rule, stacking habits, and is well on his way to creating a routine that sticks. But there's still one more piece to the puzzle. What if, despite all this, you still struggle to keep your habits going. What if motivation just isn't enough? That's exactly what James Clear tackles in Chapter 6 of Atomic Habits. Motivation is overrated. Environment often matters more. We often think that if we're struggling with our habits, the problem is that we're just not motivated enough. But the truth is, even the most motivated people get stuck if their environment isn't helping them succeed. Let's take Sam, for example. Even though he's been sticking to his 2-minute habits, some days are tougher than others. He finds himself distracted by his phone, his cluttered desk, and all the little things pulling him away from his goals. Here's what James Clear explains in Chapter 6. Our environment plays a bigger role in shaping our habits than we realize. If you want to change your behavior, the most effective thing you can do is change your surroundings. Instead of relying on willpower and motivation, Sam can design his environment to make the right decisions easier. The less friction between him and his good habits, the more likely he is to follow through with them. Take his phone, for instance. It's one of his biggest distractions. Instead of relying on motivation to resist picking it up, Sam moves his phone to another room. Now, if he wants to check it, he has to physically get up and walk away from his desk. A small but effective barrier that reduces the temptation. This is the power of environment design. It's not just about removing distractions but also about adding cues that trigger positive habits. After decluttering his desk, Sam places a book and his water bottle in front of him, visual cues that remind him to read and stay hydrated. It's important to remember that our environment includes more than just our physical space. It's the people we surround ourselves with, the places we spend our time, and even the sounds and smells in our environment. In Sam's case, creating an environment that encourages focus helps him stick to his habits without needing an extra push of motivation. The distractions are removed, and the cues for his new habits are front and center. Whether Sam's working out, reading, or staying productive, the idea is the same. Make good habits easier by designing an environment that supports them. And this doesn't just apply to Sam, it applies to all of us. For example, let's say you're trying to eat healthier, but your kitchen is full of junk food. Every time you open the fridge, you see sugary snacks right in front of you. No matter how motivated you are, resisting that temptation every day takes effort. Instead, if you remove the junk food and place healthy options front and center, you've created an environment where it's easier to make the right choice. Here's the key lesson from Chapter 6. You don't have to be perfect. You don't need endless motivation or discipline. What you need is an environment that nudges you in the right direction. The easier it is to do the right thing, the more likely you are to do it. For Sam, it's not about willpower. It's about making small tweaks to his surroundings, removing the clutter, reducing distractions, and placing positive cues in his path. This way, success becomes inevitable. So, here's the takeaway. If you want to build better habits, don't just focus on motivation. Focus on shaping your environment to make your habits easier. The world around you has more influence on your actions than you might think. Sam is making great progress. He's used the 2-minute rule to get started, stacked habits onto existing routines, and designed his environment to support his goals. But there's one more challenge he faces: temptation. Even with everything going right, sometimes we slip. We give in to old habits, distractions, or cravings. What if there was a way to overcome this without relying on sheer willpower? In Chapter 7 of Atomic Habits, James Clear explains the secret to self-control. And here's the surprising part. Self-control isn't about discipline. It's about avoiding temptation in the first place. Picture this. Sam's been doing well, focusing on his work. But then, bing! A notification pops up on his phone. It's hard to resist the urge to check it. He feels a pull toward distraction. In that moment, self-control seems like the answer. But instead of fighting the temptation, James Clear suggests something else. Don't rely on self-control. Eliminate the temptation altogether. In Chapter 7, Clear argues that the people with the greatest self-control aren't more disciplined than the rest of us. They simply avoid situations where they'll need to use it. Sam doesn't need to muster the willpower to resist his phone if it's not there to distract him in the first place. This is why environment plays such a critical role in habit formation. If you remove the cues that trigger bad habits, you don't have to rely on self-control to resist them. It's much easier to avoid temptations than it is to constantly fight them. For Sam, this means being proactive. Before the workday starts, he turns off notifications on his phone, cleans his desk, and places only the tools he needs for his task in front of him. He doesn't leave temptation to chance. He takes control of his environment so he won't have to rely on self-discipline. James Clear explains that our brain is wired for temptation. Every time Sam sees his phone or a plate of cookies, his brain lights up, craving the instant gratification. And the more you resist, the harder it becomes to say no. Willpower, like a muscle, tires out. But when Sam removes those temptations from sight, he's essentially removing the need for self-control altogether. Think about this. Why do supermarkets place candy and snacks right by the checkout counters? It's not a coincidence. These products are there because they know you'll be tempted in a moment of weakness. But if you never walk down the snack aisle or you plan your meals ahead, you reduce the chance of giving in to temptation. For Sam, keeping healthy snacks in his kitchen and removing junk food makes it easier to make the right choice. He's not fighting against cravings all day long. Instead, he's made the right choice the easiest choice. Here's what happens in your brain. Every habit starts with a cue. It could be a notification, a sight, a sound, or even a smell. When the cue is present, the craving kicks in, and you feel pulled to act on it. But if you eliminate the cue, if you don't see your phone or smell junk food, you don't even start the habit loop. The secret to self-control, according to James Clear, is creating an environment where good habits are obvious and bad habits are invisible. Sam didn't need superhuman discipline today because he built an environment that worked for him, not against him. And that's the key takeaway from Chapter 7. Don't rely on willpower. Design your environment so you don't need to. What temptations can you remove from your environment today? Think about the bad habits you're trying to break and how you can avoid the cues that trigger them. Sam's doing well. He's tackled distractions, designed his environment for success, and even avoided relying too much on self-control. But there's one more step in solidifying his habits, making them irresistible. In Chapter 8 of Atomic Habits, James Clear reveals how to make your habits so attractive that you actually look forward to them. The secret? It all comes down to something called temptation bundling and using the science of dopamine to your advantage. We all have habits we want to build but struggle to get excited about. For Sam, it's exercise. He knows it's important, but the motivation to get started is often missing. That's where Chapter 8 comes in with a solution. Combine something you need to do with something you want to do. James Clear calls this strategy temptation bundling. It works by pairing an activity you want to do, like listening to your favorite podcast, with one you need to do, like exercising. Sam's workout becomes more enjoyable because he only listens to his favorite podcast while working out. The desire to hear the latest episode drives him to start his exercise routine. The beauty of temptation bundling is that it adds immediate gratification to a habit that might otherwise feel like a chore. Sam no longer dreads working out. He looks forward to it because it's his chance to catch up on the shows he loves. Here's the science behind it. Habits are driven by dopamine, the chemical in our brain that makes us feel good. But it's not just the reward itself that releases dopamine, it's the anticipation of the reward. When Sam bundles his workout with his favorite podcast, his brain starts releasing dopamine before he even begins exercising. The anticipation of enjoying the podcast motivates him to get started. But it doesn't stop at exercise. Temptation bundling can be applied to any habit. Let's say you want to read more, but you also love drinking coffee. You could bundle them by only allowing yourself to enjoy your coffee while reading. Soon, you'll start looking forward to both. By combining what you want with what you need, you make your habits more enjoyable. You're no longer forcing yourself to do them. Instead, you look forward to the experience. This brings us to another powerful concept in Chapter 8, the dopamine-driven feedback loop. When your habits trigger the release of dopamine, you're more likely to repeat them. The more you enjoy the experience, the more your brain craves that feeling again. Every habit follows a loop: cue, craving, response, and reward. The more enjoyable the reward, the stronger the craving becomes. This is how Sam's habit of exercising to a podcast or reading with coffee turns into something he craves, not something he dreads. Let's take something less exciting, like cleaning. Sam isn't a fan of doing chores, but he loves upbeat music. So, he bundles the two. He only listens to his favorite playlist while cleaning. Now, the music makes the chore feel less like work and more like a dance party. This is the key lesson from Chapter 8. If you can find a way to make your habits irresistible, you won't need to rely on discipline or motivation. By using temptation bundling and leveraging dopamine, you can turn even the most mundane habits into something you look forward to. James Clear reminds us that habits don't have to feel like a grind. By making them enjoyable and pairing them with activities you already love, you increase your chances of sticking with them long-term. So, what habit can you make irresistible today? Try pairing it with something you love, and watch how quickly it becomes a part of your routine. Sam's been doing great. His habits are sticking and he's found ways to make them irresistible. But there's another powerful force at play in shaping our habits: the influence of the people around us. In Chapter 9 of Atomic Habits, James Clear dives into the role family, friends, and social circles play in our behaviors. Whether we realize it or not, we are deeply influenced by those closest to us. Think about it. How often have you found yourself doing something just because everyone around you is doing it? Maybe you weren't craving that extra slice of pizza, but everyone else was digging in, so you joined too. This is social influence at work. James Clear explains that humans are social creatures. We want to fit in, and we often mirror the habits of those around us. In fact, the habits of your friends, family, and social group can either push you toward success or pull you off track. For Sam, resisting temptation becomes tougher in social settings. His friends' choices subtly influence his own. But there's a silver lining. Just as negative habits can spread, positive ones can too. In Chapter 9, James Clear points out that if you want to adopt a new habit, one of the best things you can do is join a culture where your desired behavior is the norm. Sam's friend Mike recently started a fitness routine, and it's inspired Sam to do the same. It's much easier to stick to a habit when it's something that's expected by the people around you. Sam finds that working out becomes less of a chore and more of a shared experience because Mike is there to motivate him. They hold each other accountable, making the habit easier to maintain. Clear explains that the people we surround ourselves with create a kind of invisible pressure. Whether it's subtle or direct, we are constantly adjusting our behaviors to align with the expectations of those around us. This is why it's so important to be mindful of the influence your friends, family, and coworkers have on your habits. Here's the thing: social influence isn't just about peer pressure. It's also about the ideas and habits we pick up from those around us, even unintentionally. When Sam hears his coworker talk about meditation, it plants a seed in his mind. He starts thinking about how he could add meditation to his own routine. This is another key lesson from Chapter 9. If you want to build better habits, spend time with people who already live the way you want to live. Sam's coworker didn't push him to meditate. Simply hearing about it sparked an interest. This is how powerful social influence can be. We often underestimate the power of the people around us. Their habits and behaviors ripple out and affect us, even if we don't realize it. Surround yourself with people who have the habits you want, and you'll be more likely to adopt them too. This doesn't mean you have to cut ties with people who don't share your habits, but it does mean being intentional about which relationships you allow to influence your actions. For Sam, spending more time with his health-conscious friends has made it easier to choose better meals and stay active. So, what can we learn from Sam's experience? If you want to build better habits, find a group of people who value those same habits. Whether it's joining a fitness class, spending more time with health-conscious friends, or simply surrounding yourself with like-minded people, your environment is more than just your physical space, it's the people around you too. The people closest to you can be your greatest asset in building better habits, or your biggest obstacle. Choose your influences wisely, and you'll find that sticking to your habits becomes a lot easier. Even with all the progress Sam's made, there are still bad habits that creep back into his life. And that's what Chapter 10 of Atomic Habits is all about: understanding the root cause of our bad habits and how to fix them. According to James Clear, every habit, good or bad, follows a pattern: cue, craving, response, and reward. If you want to break a bad habit, you need to understand its triggers. Sam's bad habit of endlessly scrolling on his phone usually starts with boredom or procrastination. His cue. Clear explains that if you can remove or change the cue, you can stop the habit before it starts. Sam realizes that his phone is the cue that triggers his distraction, so he decides to move it out of sight during work hours. By removing the cue, Sam reduces the craving to check his phone. This is the first step in breaking a bad habit. Make it invisible. If you don't see the trigger, you won't act on it. The second step? Make bad habits unattractive. If the cues for unhealthy behaviors are visible, like junk food on the counter, it's easy to fall into old patterns. Sam replaces his snacks with healthier alternatives, making his bad habits less appealing. It's also important to dig deeper. Sometimes, bad habits are a response to emotional triggers, like stress, boredom, or anxiety. By understanding the underlying emotions driving these behaviors, you can create healthier responses. For Sam, that might mean taking a walk or doing a quick stretch when he feels stressed, instead of grabbing his phone or snacks. The key lesson from Chapter 10 is simple. If you want to break a bad habit, don't just focus on the behavior. Focus on the cues and cravings driving that behavior. By making the cue invisible and the habit unattractive, you make it easier to stop the cycle. So, what bad habit can you work on today? Start by identifying the cue and removing it from your environment. When the trigger is gone, the habit often disappears with it. By now, Sam has built some solid habits, but the journey hasn't always been smooth. Sometimes it feels like progress is slow, and that's where Chapter 11 of Atomic Habits comes in. James Clear reminds us, the goal isn't perfection, it's consistency. The key lesson? Walk slowly but never backward. In life and in habits, setbacks are inevitable. You're going to miss a workout, eat junk food, or skip a routine. But the important thing is to never let those setbacks become a permanent step backward. As James Clear says, missing once is an accident. Missing twice is the start of a new habit. Progress isn't a straight line. You'll have ups and downs, but as long as you recover quickly from a missed habit, you're still on track. Sam reminds himself that it's not about being perfect every day. It's about showing up more often than not. James Clear emphasizes that small improvements compound over time. Even if you feel like you're moving slowly, what matters is that you're moving forward. Sam's progress in building better habits is gradual but steady. He knows that consistency wins the game. In Chapter 11, Clear gives us a powerful reminder: never miss twice. Missing once isn't a big deal, but if you miss twice, you risk slipping into a negative habit loop. Sam keeps this in mind as he gets back into his routine after a missed day, focusing on recovery, not perfection. The key takeaway? Slow progress is still progress. You don't have to be perfect to succeed. As long as you're moving forward, even slowly, you're on the right path. Sam's habits are sticking, but there's something else he's learned to make them even easier. That's the secret James Clear reveals in Chapter 12 of Atomic Habits, the law of least effort. The idea is simple. We naturally gravitate toward the path that requires the least amount of work. If you want to make a habit stick, you need to reduce the friction between you and that behavior. James Clear explains that humans are wired to conserve energy. Whether it's physical effort or mental effort, we prefer the easiest option. Sam used to skip his workouts because getting up, finding his clothes, and getting ready took too much time. But now, by preparing everything the night before, he's reduced the friction that used to stop him. Think about it like this. If two paths lead to the same destination, but one is filled with obstacles and the other is smooth and clear, which one are you more likely to take? The law of least effort says that we always choose the easier option. So if you want to build better habits, you need to make them the easiest path to follow. But the law of least effort works both ways. Just like Sam can make good habits easier, bad habits can be easy too. For Sam, scrolling on his phone is easier than focusing on work. It's right there, calling for his attention. This is why Clear suggests we make bad habits harder to do. Sam knows that if his phone is out of sight, it takes more effort to reach for it. By adding friction to the bad habit, he's less likely to get distracted. This is one of the simplest and most effective strategies for breaking bad habits. Make them hard to do and you'll naturally do them less. Let's look at how Sam applies this idea to another habit he's working on, reading. Before, his books were tucked away on a shelf, and he rarely reached for them. But by placing his book on his nightstand, right next to his bed, Sam has made it the easiest choice before going to sleep. By reducing the effort needed to start a habit, it becomes more automatic. In Chapter 12, Clear also introduces the idea of the 2-minute rule. When starting a new habit, reduce it to something that takes 2 minutes or less. Want to build a reading habit? Start by reading just 1 page. Want to build an exercise habit? Start by putting on your workout shoes. These small actions require little effort but get the ball rolling. For Sam, just putting on his workout shoes is often enough to convince him to head out for a run. It's such a small step that it feels easy, but once it's done, it's much harder to say no to the workout. That's the magic of reducing habits to their simplest form. They become so easy to start that it's hard not to do them. Sam is learning how to apply the law of least effort in every area of his life. He makes drinking more water easier by keeping a bottle at his desk. He's set up his yoga mat so it's always visible, reminding him to stretch. And by meal prepping healthy foods, he's made it the easiest option for lunch. Small changes, but they reduce the effort needed to follow through on good habits. Chapter 12 reminds us that we don't need to rely on motivation or willpower to build better habits. Instead, we can design our environment to make good habits the path of least resistance. For Sam, this means setting up his surroundings to make the right choices easy and the wrong ones harder. So, what's one habit you can make easier today? Can you prepare for tomorrow's workout tonight? Can you move the book you want to read closer to your bed? By removing the obstacles in your way, you make progress inevitable. Sam's been making progress, but sometimes he still finds himself procrastinating, putting off tasks that seem too big or daunting. In Chapter 13 of Atomic Habits, James Clear introduces a simple yet powerful tool to overcome procrastination, the 2-minute rule. The 2-minute rule is based on a straightforward principle. If a task takes 2 minutes or less to complete, do it now. The idea is to break down overwhelming tasks into tiny, manageable actions. Instead of being daunted by a big project, focus on just starting it. Sam's project feels enormous, but he uses the 2-minute rule to tackle it. He doesn't worry about completing the entire project right now. He just focuses on doing something small that takes less than 2 minutes. By starting with just 1 sentence, he makes the task feel less intimidating. By breaking tasks into 2-minute chunks, Sam discovers that getting started is often the hardest part. Once he's begun, he finds it easier to keep going. The 2-minute rule helps him build momentum, making the overall project feel more achievable. James Clear points out that the 2-minute rule can be applied to any habit you want to build. If you want to read more, start by reading just 1 page. If you want to exercise regularly, begin by doing 1 stretch. These tiny actions are easy to start and can lead to larger, consistent habits. Sam uses the 2-minute rule for decluttering. Instead of feeling overwhelmed by the whole house, he starts with just 1 drawer. This small action seems manageable and helps him make progress without feeling burdened. The key is to start small and let the momentum build. The beauty of the 2-minute rule is that it makes the start of a task so easy that it's hard to say no. By focusing on small, manageable actions, Sam finds himself naturally transitioning into more significant work, building both confidence and productivity. Chapter 13 teaches us that overcoming procrastination doesn't have to be complicated. By applying the 2-minute rule, you can reduce the mental barrier to starting tasks and build momentum for larger goals. It's about making the first step so easy that you can't help but take it. What's one task you can break down into a 2-minute action today? Share with us in the comments. Sam is now growing as a person, but how can he make sure his good habits stick while making the bad ones a thing of the past? In Chapter 14 of Atomic Habits, James Clear offers powerful strategies to make good habits inevitable and bad habits nearly impossible. The key idea in Chapter 14 is to design your environment to make good habits the default choice and bad habits difficult. This means making small, deliberate changes to your surroundings that nudge you toward better choices. For example, if Sam wants to eat healthier, he places nutritious snacks where he can see them easily and puts junk food out of sight. By making the healthy option the most convenient, he's increasing the likelihood that he'll choose it. To make exercise inevitable, Sam keeps his workout clothes and gear in a visible and convenient place. This way, when he's ready to exercise, everything is right there, reducing the friction and making it easier to get started. Conversely, Sam makes bad habits harder by removing the triggers. He turns off notifications and keeps his phone out of reach while working. By reducing the temptation and making distractions less accessible, he's decreasing the chances of falling into old, unproductive habits. James Clear also emphasizes the power of making habits automatic. By creating systems where good habits are built into your routine, you eliminate the need for constant decision-making. For Sam, breaking down a big project into smaller tasks with specific deadlines makes it easier to stay on track and avoid procrastination. Another technique is habit stacking, pairing a new habit with an existing one. Sam stacks his new stretching routine with brushing his teeth. By anchoring the new habit to an established routine, it becomes a seamless part of his day. James also suggests using a habit tracker to keep yourself accountable. Sam tracks his habits daily, which helps him stay motivated and see his progress over time. The visual feedback keeps him engaged and committed to his goals. Chapter 14 teaches us that the environment plays a crucial role in shaping our habits. By designing our surroundings to support our goals, we make good habits inevitable and bad habits difficult. It's about creating a setup that works for you, making positive changes easier and negative ones harder. Sam's habits are improving, but he's learned an important lesson from Chapter 15 of Atomic Habits, the cardinal rule of behavior change. This rule can make or break your habit-building journey, and it's all about making new habits satisfying and bad habits unsatisfying. James Clear explains that the key to behavior change lies in the reward part of the habit loop. To make a new habit stick, you need to find a way to make it satisfying immediately. Conversely, to break a bad habit, you need to make it unsatisfying. For example, Sam wants to drink more water, so he uses a habit tracker app that provides instant feedback and rewards him for each goal achieved. This immediate satisfaction reinforces his new habit, making it more likely to stick. James suggests incorporating small rewards for completing your new habits. Sam enjoys a small, healthy treat after his workouts. This immediate gratification makes the habit more enjoyable and encourages him to keep going. To make bad habits less appealing, you need to introduce a form of immediate punishment or discomfort. Sam sets up a rule where he has to pay a small fine if he skips a workout. This immediate consequence makes the bad habit less rewarding and helps him stay on track. For reducing screen time, Sam installs an app that limits his phone use and tracks his screen time. By making it more difficult to access his phone and adding a visual reminder of his usage, he makes the habit of excessive phone use less satisfying. The cardinal rule of behavior change is all about creating a feedback loop that supports your goals. By making new habits satisfying and bad habits unsatisfying, you leverage immediate rewards and consequences to reinforce your behavior changes. Chapter 15 teaches us that behavior change is deeply connected to how satisfying or unsatisfying our habits feel. What's one habit you can make more rewarding or a bad habit you can make less appealing? Comment below now. Sam's been working hard on his habits, but sticking to them daily can still be a challenge. In Chapter 16 of Atomic Habits, James Clear shares strategies to help us stay consistent and ensure our good habits become a permanent part of our daily lives. One of the key strategies Clear emphasizes is the power of habit tracking. By keeping a visual record of your habits, you create a sense of accountability and motivation. For Sam, marking off each day he completes his habits provides a visual reminder of his progress and encourages him to keep going. Seeing a streak of completed days on his habit tracker boosts Sam's motivation. The longer the streak, the harder it becomes to break it. This visual progress reinforces his commitment and helps him stay consistent. Another important strategy is to make your environment work for you. Sam sets up his environment the night before to make it easier to follow through with his habits. By preparing everything in advance, he reduces friction and removes excuses. James also introduces the idea of identity-based habits. Instead of focusing on what you want to achieve, think about the type of person you want to become. Sam shifts his mindset to see himself as a fit and healthy person. This identity-based approach helps him stay committed, as his habits align with his self-image. Setbacks are inevitable, but Clear stresses the importance of not letting them derail your progress. If Sam misses a workout, he doesn't give up entirely. Instead, he quickly gets back on track and focuses on his long-term goals, understanding that consistency over time is what matters most. The key takeaway from Chapter 16 is that consistency is built through daily actions and a resilient mindset. By tracking your habits, setting up your environment, embracing an identity-based approach, and recovering from setbacks, you make it easier to stick with your good habits every day. Sam has come a long way in making great strides with his habits, but he wonders about the role of natural talent versus effort. In Chapter 17 of Atomic Habits, James Clear explores the truth about talent, when your genes matter and when they don't. Clear begins by acknowledging that natural talent can play a role in certain areas. However, he emphasizes that effort and practice often matter more. It's not just about what you're born with, but how you apply yourself to develop your skills. Take the example of a young athlete. While some may have a natural inclination towards a sport, consistent practice and effort are what lead to improvement. Clear explains that talent is often a starting point, but it's dedication and hard work that build mastery. Clear also discusses the concept of deliberate practice, focused, purposeful practice designed to improve performance. Sam dedicates time to study and refine his skills, understanding that deliberate practice helps him advance more than just raw talent alone. It's easy to believe that talent alone determines success, but Chapter 17 teaches us that effort, practice, and perseverance are crucial. Sam's growth comes from his willingness to put in the work, not just from any inherent talent. Clear also highlights the importance of surrounding yourself with supportive environments and people. A positive, collaborative community can enhance your growth and provide valuable feedback, helping you to reach your potential regardless of your starting point. Success is often the result of a combination of talent and hard work. Chapter 17 reminds us that while talent can give you a head start, it's the consistent effort, practice, and support that truly drive long-term success. As we reach the end of our journey through Atomic Habits, it's clear that the path to lasting change is paved with small, consistent actions. James Clear has shown us how tiny improvements can lead to remarkable transformations. From understanding the power of identity-based habits to designing our environment for success, we've explored the principles that can make our habits stick and our goals achievable. Remember, every small step counts, and every tiny habit is a building block toward a bigger change. So, what's next for you? How will you apply these lessons to your own life? Whether you're looking to build new habits or break old ones, the power is in your hands. Start with small changes, stay consistent, and watch as those tiny actions lead to big results. Thank you for joining us on this exploration of Atomic Habits. If you found these summaries helpful, be sure to like, subscribe, and share with others who might benefit. Keep striving, keep growing, and remember, the journey of 1,000 miles begins with a single step. Until next time, keep building those habits and making positive changes in your life.